As of the 1st of August, the Sahm Rule has been triggered for the first time since the 2020 COVID crash. Since 1955, it has held flawless accuracy in indicating that a recession is beginning. Today, I will take a deep dive into the indicator to see if the US really is in a recession. The Sahm Rule is a recession indicator created by the economist Claudia Sahm. The formula for it is pretty simple. It is the 3-month moving average of the unemployment rate minus its 12-month low. If this value is above 0.5%, then the rule has been triggered. Currently, the 3-month moving average is at 4.13%, and the 12-month low is at 3.6%. So, does this mean the US is in a recession? Historically, yes, it has had a 100% accuracy in indicating recession, but the keen-eyed among you will have noticed that it often triggers well after a recession has already begun, and at least for now, it doesn't quite yet seem like we're in a recession. So, let's take a closer look. This indicator is based off the unemployment rate, which rose from 3.5% to 4.3% in the last 12 months. So, what could be causing this rise? Most recessions follow a similar pattern, where in order to combat inflation, the Fed will raise interest rates, thus stressing businesses by increasing their interest payments and decreasing their revenue. As a result of this, they are forced to reduce labor costs, so they begin to lay off old workers and stop hiring new ones. So, let's look at each of these one by one. First of all, are people getting fired? If we look at initial jobless claims, it's not entirely clear. It is true that the rate of layoffs have increased by 25% since January. However, the current level of 250,000 is just not that high in a historical context, especially if you consider that the labor force is the largest it's ever been. As a percentage, the level of layoffs is near the lowest it's ever been. Okay, so what about new jobs? And if we look at the data for job creation, we do again see a softening in recent months. But, once again, the absolute level is very normal in a historical context. Okay, so, this is really weird, right? If people aren't losing their jobs at a high rate, and people aren't struggling to find jobs, then what on earth is happening to cause a 25% raise in the unemployment rate? Well, it's actually to do with how the rate is calculated. The unemployment rate is defined as the number of unemployed people divided by the total labor force. The key here is that the number of unemployed people is actually defined as the labor force minus the number of employees. So, why is this important? Well, between February of 2020 and today, the labor force has risen by 4.02 million people. As a result of this, the unemployed population has risen from 5.73 million to 7.16 million. This constitutes a rise of 1.43 million, or in percentage terms, 25%, the same as the rise in the unemployment rate. Okay, so we've established that the rise in the unemployment rate was mostly caused by an increase in the labor force, rather than people actually losing their jobs or struggling to find new ones. Okay, now working in logical chains, what caused the increase in the labor force? In the last 4 years, there has been mass immigration into the United States through its southern border. Just in the last 2 years alone, the foreign-born population of America has increased by over 5 million. And of course, with this influx of immigrants comes an influx of working-age people to add to the labor force statistics. Okay, but why are they still unemployed? Well, with any group of people, we would expect to see some level of friction when entering the job market. This is called job friction. There are 3 things that I think might be making job friction higher for this group of people. First of all, it would be fair to assume that as they are new to the country, they will have to encounter cultural and societal differences, as well as potentially a language barrier when trying to find work. Secondly, there may be a skills mismatch. This is when the skills that companies need are misaligned with the skills of the unemployed workforce, or vice versa. These people are new to the economy and thus haven't yet had time to develop the skills that are in demand. And third of all, they are competing with all the people coming back to work after the pandemic. You can imagine the jobs market as a funnel. Only a certain number of people can go through at any given time. More applicants doesn't mean more employees. The dual influx of these 2 groups could be raising the competition for jobs and thus raising the friction in the form of companies having to look at more CVs and do more interviews for the same number of positions. All this put together could mean that the rise in the unemployment rate is just transitory and will go away slowly as these people slowly start to find jobs. And there are currently jobs available. As of July of 2024, there are 1.2 job openings for every single unemployed person. So, there is a real chance that the unemployment rate is overstating the weakness in the jobs market, and the Sahm Rule has just falsely triggered for the first time. However, to add a little bit of nuance to the conversation, and honestly a bit of realism, there are still some serious headwinds facing the US economy. While both job creation and job losses are at historically normal levels, both are also currently heading in the wrong direction. On top of this, there are serious geopolitical risks in Eastern Europe and the Middle Eastern region. And all the while, the S&P 500 is now sitting at a very fragile 35 on the Shiller-PE ratio and a 195% reading on the buffer indicator. If you're interested in either of these indicators, I have a video linked in the top right corner. Okay, to be clear, this news is not definitive in either direction. The Sahm Rule is just one indicator, and despite the fact that its record is perfect, its record is also only made of 12 data points, which just isn't enough to make it definitive. Also, I must mention that the rule was once triggered without a recession in 1976. However, the unemployment data was later revised and the rule was de-triggered. So, in conclusion, are we in a recession? No. Just based off this, I do not think the US is already 2 months into a recession, nor do I think that this is the beginning of a recession. However, this could be an early warning sign that if things continue to go in this direction within the next 3 to 6 months, we could be looking down the barrel of not only a deep recession, but also a concurrent fall in equity prices. All my graphs and data sources will be in the description below. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. And by the way, I've been hearing calls for the Fed to hold an emergency rate cut meeting and to cut the Fed funds rate by 150 basis points by September. It's just, you never know what kind of positions these guys that are saying this stuff have. And to be fair to them, they're never given the time to back up their opinions. But yeah, just be careful out there, guys. Peace and love.